Hey folks, my name is Mo Amir and this is VANCOLOUR, British Columbia's bona fide culture and politics TV talk show. The biggest story in the entire country right now is how the Canadian economy and Canadian sovereignty itself are being threatened by the United States, the most powerful country ever known, a country we thought was our closest ally. I know that this show focuses on issues and personalities local to BC, but we can't ignore this hanging sword, so tonight we're going to host two very knowledgeable, very esteemed guests to help us make sense of the threats that we face from the United States and the risks that we face from not pursuing the right response. To kick us off is the former leader of the Conservative Party of Canada and, in my opinion, a missed opportunity for the country, Erin O'Toole. Erin, what an honor. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Mo. What a lovely intro. So thank you very much.
Now, the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, Andrew Furey, recently urged Canadians to realize that U.S. President Trump is not joking about Canada being America's 51st state. You are a pretty level-headed guy, so should we be freaking out right now?
The answer is no.
No?
And in fact, Premier Furey is a really good person, and there's a lot of people that are very worried for good reason. But there's two things to keep in mind. One, don't take the bait. When someone says something on social media, as you probably know, Mo, it's usually meant to gain a reaction. Sadly, Twitter and a lot of social media is just about that. But second thing is, we can negotiate in a lot more serious of a fashion vis-a-vis the United States than we did during Trump 1.0. I was the conservative critic when Madame Freeland was doing that negotiating. We didn't take the U.S. concerns seriously. So one, ignore social media, ignore the 51st state. We should be worried about the economy and the change in direction of our long-standing friend and ally, but let's also calm the rhetoric down ourselves, because it's that emotional reaction that Trump wants.
Fair enough. Now let's talk about some of those economic challenges that we face. The U.S. is slated to impose trade tariffs onto Canada, which obviously will hurt our economy since we are so dependent on getting our products to the American market. And as you noted, this is not the first time that our country has been in a trade dispute with U.S. President Donald Trump and his administration. But I think it's fair to say that we don't know exactly what President Trump wants. He cites border security, but then he talks about a trade imbalance. But then he clearly sees tariffs as a way to generate income for the U.S., or at least a way to attract investment into the U.S., all while he expresses his desire to annex our country altogether, whether that's just him trolling or not. Is this what makes this trade dispute so challenging, that we don't know exactly what Trump wants and what he's willing to sacrifice in order to get what he wants?
That does complicate it, Mo. You're absolutely right. But let's separate the personalities here. When you negotiate, you don't have to love the person on the other end of the negotiation table, but you have to try and respect and understand them. Let's look at what the U.S. has asked for well over a decade. It's for Canada to spend 2% of our GDP on defense, to pay our fair share. Now, that's something I advocated for, even criticizing my own caucus a little bit when the Conservatives were in power. Canada has been able to be sort of a free rider within NATO because we were so close. We were a border security partner of the United States. But I remember, Mo, being in the House of Commons when President Obama mentioned defense spending in his event with Prime Minister Trudeau. So let's fix that. The border has been an issue. You look at some of the issues in the Port of Vancouver, counterfeit goods, the fentanyl issues are completely overplayed. But Roxham Road, other things, it has seemed that Canada doesn't have an appropriate level of control over a border that we want to stay open to goods trade. So let's take the border seriously. There's a number of things that we can do that are in our interests anyway. It does mean that Trump may come up with a new item, but let's not lose sight of the fact that some of these issues, defense, Arctic sovereignty, our role in NATO, our role working with the US to curb trade abuses from China. These are all things that have been asked for by the United States for 15 years. So we should get moving on them, and then we'll roll with the punches with some of the rhetoric and other challenges Trump is presenting on a negotiation front.
Now, clearly, the Trump presidency is defining our own politics here in Canada, and I would say even provincially among different provinces. Do you fear that some Canadian politicians will exploit this by getting up on their soapbox just to rile up Canadians or people in their own province, rah, 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 look at my moral outrage at the expense of the national effort? Because we know that sometimes politicians will pick winning politics, even if it means losing policy.
You mean politicians picking politics, Mo? That sounds crazy. Yes, there's a bit of that happening. And look, I don't want to criticize anyone in this. I think we're all Canadians. We have all our own personal experience with the United States. I served in the military and served alongside the Americans in several training operations and in other events. I also worked for one of the United States, America's oldest companies. Procter and Gamble is their lawyer in Canada. They employ thousands of people. I worked with my counterpart when I was Minister of Veterans Affairs. So I really wish we would see the U.S. return to their traditional role as a responsible leading world player and force within NATO. But that's disrupted right now. So let's see what each premier, each provincial opposition and legislature can do. But also when the Liberals wrap up their leadership race, they've got to realize that they really blew it on Trump 1.0. I was there. I was never trying to be too critical of Team Canada. But when Minister Freeland went down to Washington and criticized the president, when we didn't even mention auto as a priority for Canada in the NAFTA renegotiations, we did not take it seriously. And let's be a serious country. So Mo, in the fall, I wrote an article in the Financial Post said, make Canada serious again. It's time for us to stop the virtue signaling that we've seen under Mr. Trudeau and be serious. There's going to be areas where we do not agree with the United States, particularly some of their rhetoric on Ukraine. We're passing 3 years since the start of the full invasion of Ukraine by Putin's Russia. There's going to be areas where we don't agree, but there's going to be areas that we can partner, like in critical minerals, energy security, Arctic security. And let's focus on that. And BC, it's time for BC to really catch up with some of their policy missteps. It's time for the EB government to reduce its emission cap. It's going to hurt the BC economy in the long run. We've got to be more prudent and smart when it comes to the energy transition. You can lower emissions while also making sure we have economic activity and security partnership with the United States on energy. I see language from Premier Eby and other provincial leaders, meaning they're going to try new things, particularly with respect to resources. I think that's a positive.
Now, really quickly, we have about a minute left here. So much of our infrastructure, including the infrastructure to send energy and to trade with the US, is built around that relationship between Canada and the US. Which other countries could we quickly shift our exports to right away?
Nothing is quick in trade. I worked on the European trade deal in the Harper government. I went to Seoul, South Korea, and had the help of Senator Martin from British Columbia and a number of great members of the Korean Canadian business community in Vancouver, helping us grow our first free trade agreement in Asia. There's a lot of markets we can explore, but that will take a little bit more time, Mo. Let's diversify. Let's get our energy. Let's get another pipeline to Tidewater, while we're also trying to maintain what U.S. trade we have, fix the relationship, but be a lot more serious. And that will mean a more active Canada on the world stage, pursuing markets and playing our role in NATO and other organizations.
Erin, I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I think our country would be in a much better spot if you were Prime Minister. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your insights tonight.
Kind of you to say, and I'm glad you're covering these issues for your viewers.
Folks, the former leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, Erin O'Toole. Now, after some business, investigative journalist Sam Cooper will be here to talk about whether or not Canada is truly as bad of a neighbor to the United States as they accuse us of being. That's up next.